What is the most obvious hint you've dropped that went unnoticed by a guy? She knocks on my dorm room door, carrying a chocolate cake. She said she just baked it and was wondering if I'd like to try some. I tell her that I'm not a big fan of chocolate, which disappoints her, but I'm smart enough to add that I'd like to try it anyway. She set the cake aside and I invited her in. I was about to start watching V for Vendetta when she excitedly said she loves that movie, asking if she can watch it with me. We settled down in my unfolded futon and started watching it together under a blanket. It was the middle of the Boston winter, after all. As we watch the movie, she makes lots of comments about Hugo Weaving. I love Hugo Weaving so much. God, Hugo Weaving is so hot. Man, Hugo Weaving makes me so excited. Meanwhile, I'm saying things like, yeah, he's a great actor. I loved him in The Matrix. Maybe 20 minutes go by and suddenly I feel her going up against me. Sorry, I hope you don't mind, she says. I just got really excited and couldn't help myself. I'm thinking I'm the luckiest guy in the world and feeling glad I picked a movie with Hugo Weaving in it. Of course, I say something like, that's okay. I understand. I have actresses that really do that for me too. And I do absolutely nothing because I still don't get that she's coming on to me. Another 10 minutes of this pass before she just turns to me and asks, can I be intimate with you? In my mind, my very underdeveloped, inexperienced mind, my very first thoughts were, Hugo Weaving is such a great matchmaker. And talk about being in the right place at the right time. It took me another year before I realized it was all a strategy to get close to me. And I could have been watching any movie at all with more or less than the same outcome. Dude, I get other guys not getting hints, but all those hints just peppered on your face. Man, how dense can you be? It's crazy. Story 2. My former best friend and I were incredibly close. So close, in fact, that I fell in love with her, and she seemed to feel the same way about me. We started spending more time together in the evenings, sometimes late into the night. We'd watch movies, hang out, and she became more direct about her interest in me. Once when she was dressing up for a party, she suddenly told me I didn't need to leave the room and she was changing. She became very affectionate on the couch while watching movies, and I thought, I could make a move, but I'm really happy with our friendship. Even when we went out partying and the guy started dancing with her, she said something to him, pointed at me, and the guy ran off. I assumed she wasn't interested in him. The peak of my missed opportunities came one night when we ordered food and talked about how if someone insists on someone else staying over, even if they don't live far away, it's a clear hint. Later that evening, as I was about to walk home, a 25-minute walk at most, she said, you can sleep here. We're all alone. Her mother was often away at her boyfriend's place, but I replied, nah, I'm good. It's not that far. These two conversations were only about 5 to 10 minutes apart. Adding to my cluelessness, for her 21st birthday I gave her an iPhone. In front of everyone, she hugged me, said only one thing could make the moment perfect, and looked deeply into my eyes. I did nothing. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and kick myself for not responding correctly. It could have been the start of a wonderful relationship. Damn, another one! That's crazy, bro. How many of you are there? Story 3. My roommates and I used to host a lot of parties at our apartment. Sometimes as many as 2 a week. Through these parties, you meet a lot of people, but one girl in particular caught my attention. She was about 5'5", fit, and very attractive, often wearing stylish outfits that showed off her figure. She became a regular at our place, and we would talk frequently. At one party, I mentioned I had a special bottle of liquor in my room for special occasions. She expressed interest in trying it, so we went to my bedroom. Once there, we had a drink. She noticed my Julian Edelman jersey, saying she was a big fan. She asked to try it on in front of me without hesitation. She climbed into my bed, and I joined her, but I was too nervous to make a move. I was still inexperienced at the time, so I lacked confidence. Eventually, she got up and we left the room. That was the end of it. Story 4. When my now boyfriend and I were just friends, I spent a night at his apartment after hanging out all day. I was supposed to sleep on the couch, but I managed to convince him to let me stay in his room. I think I mentioned his roommate or neighbors were too loud. He got up to get me a pillow and blanket so I could sleep on his floor. After a while, I joked about him hogging the blankets in his bed, and he invited me up. I then said I couldn't sleep and suggested we stay up to watch a movie. I'd read that Jurassic Park was a good movie for a date, so I suggested it, not mentioning that part. We were in his bed, him holding the phone above us, and I leaned in his shoulder, slowly getting closer. We lay there all night, curled up but barely touching, neither of us making a move. We fell asleep. He didn't ask me out until about 5 months later. We reenacted the scene in a hotel bed after sneaking a bottle of wine from his office Christmas party. This time, I decided to be more forward. After some wine, I felt brave enough to look into his eyes and kiss him. Later, we admitted our hesitation the first night was due to nerves about risking our friendship. The only concern about starting a relationship was the distance between us, as we lived almost 2 hours apart. But less than a week after that, I took a bus to stay with him for another night. I told him I loved him and that we should try being together anyway. We've been together since and have moved in together. One time after we moved in together, I got out of the shower, dried off, and went to the bedroom. The partner was on the bed, half sitting, half lying, reading something. I straddled him and he kept reading. I wiggled my hips and made playful banter, and he got relaxed but kept reading, not looking at me. After several minutes of playful hints, getting nothing back, I thought he must not want to be intimate for some reason. I stopped being playful, put on pajamas, and went to find something to take my mind off intimacy. The next morning he complained of blues, and I asked why he hadn't just been intimate with me if he was interested. He said he didn't want to offend me or make me feel self-conscious by staring. I asked if the wiggling, banter, and my usual interest in intimacy after evening showers didn't give him any clues. He mentioned not wanting to assume, thinking it was his problem. He always misses clues even when they're ridiculously obvious. Showing off new clothing when I only wear it for special occasions doesn't always get the desired response. Story 5. I had this guy friend I accidentally fell for a while back. A year into knowing each other, we hit that weird stage of flirtatious banter in our friendship that's usually reached when both parties are sort of attracted to each other, but nobody really has the guts to make the first move. About half a year, it got to ridiculous heights. Ironically calling each other sweetheart and darling, playful touching, just generally lots of casual touching. At that point, most of the regulars in the bar we frequented just kind of assumed we were dating already. But no, still neither of us dared to actually make the first move. At this point, it had just kind of become routine for me to come up with some kind of flimsy excuse like not wanting to walk all the way back home and for him to invite me to spend the night at his place if we happened to run into each other at the aforementioned bar. I figured he would catch on eventually, but still, no attempts to take this strange not dating thing to the next level were made. I'd sit on his bed, changing into his t-shirt while he was in the same room. We'd cuddle up and go to sleep, then spend the next morning still cuddle up, just talking about anything that came to mind. When even my most obvious attempts at provoking him to action either failed or were met with mild amusement, I accepted the fact that apparently I'd missed the friend zone by a mile. I went straight into the zone of sentient cuddle blanket and that it was time to bury these pesky little feelings and move on with my life. This man obviously did not feel a single ounce of attraction towards me. So another year passes. No more flirting, no more cuddling, most importantly, no more sleepovers. And since he didn't seem to mind, I considered my assumptions confirmed. You can smell the not-so-surprising-at-all plot twist from a mile away, can't you? Cue to another evening in the faithful bar. Drinks were consumed, random incidents were brought up, jokes that bore a little too much truth were made, and somehow the two of us found ourselves in the midst of a conversation about times past we were neither sober nor sensible enough to hold. And this guy says the fateful words. Yeah, I used to be really attracted to you, but I just didn't think you were interested. Mind you, this was said to me by the man who had me sitting on his lap while wearing his clothes. And that, dear fellows, is how I learned to never underestimate the power of male obliviousness. At least it makes for a mildly entertaining anecdote. Story 6. A coworker, who was also a recent graduate, mentioned she was donating clothes near our place to her friend in the next building and asked if she could see me. I went downstairs and we sat on a bench to talk. She quickly asked if we could go upstairs, so we did. I talked to her, played a few songs on the guitar, served her dessert, and we talked some more. There was a moment when she was lying on my bed, playing with her hair and smiling at me, and I thought, I think I did a good job hosting and entertaining you. So now what? I didn't say it out loud, but she left frustrated, saying, You are clueless. There was even a moment when I gave her the guitar because I remembered seeing a picture of her with one, thinking she could play. She couldn't, and she struggled to put it back on the wall mount. That's a simple task, but she wanted my help, sticking her body out and waiting for me to assist her. I managed to help her without touching her, thinking, Good job. You didn't take advantage of the situation and potentially make her uncomfortable. So he had a coworker lying in his bed, playing with her hair and smiling at him. His big takeaway was, I think I did a good job hosting. That's like having a masterpiece painting in your living room and thinking, this really brightens up the place. Story 7. My ex and I had a secret code for when we wanted to be intimate and couldn't find the right moment to say so in public. The code was, Hey, is it 3:30 yet? No matter the actual time, we check a clock and say yes, then leave as if we had an appointment. Many of her friends never caught on, and we often left them confused by suddenly asking if it was 3:30 and then taking off. One night we were with friends, enjoying drinks, games, and music. She was playing with my hair, holding a drink in her other hand, and she asked, Is it 3:30 yet? I checked my phone and it was around 3, but not exactly 3:30. The drink and the close timing threw me off, and I said, Nah, it's 3 something. I continued the conversation, not realizing my mistake. She burst into laughter and said, "Okay." Later that night, as I entered the room where she was sleeping, she tripped me and said, "Next time I ask if it's 3:30, you better pull out something else instead of your phone or we're going to have issues." Being intimate with her was amazing, but her desire was higher than mine, which was part of why we're not together anymore. I facepalmed, realizing I had been a dummy. Story 8. I had a partner in microbiology whom I was attracted to. I asked to see his dorm, wearing just shorts and a tank top. I talked about our lab report and future classes, moving on to him for 15 minutes before giving up. Later, he asked why we never had a thing, and I facepalmed, hard. I also reconnected with an ex. We met weekly at a bar to drink and vent about life for about 2 months. I gave him flirty looks and stood close when saying goodbye, but he never got the hint. Finally, I bluntly asked, "Do you want to be intimate with me?" His jaw dropped and he said, "Oh, yes." I met a cute guy online, and our first date went well. On our second date at a street art festival with friends, I played the cool girl, getting everyone free drinks and us into clubs for free. Friends commented on how cute we looked together, and his friends kept pushing us closer. I made suggestive remarks, but he was oblivious, thinking I was just complimenting him. When the party ended, I said, "I'm going home. Can you drive me?" He thought I was too hammered to drive and offered to take me home, even suggesting we call my roommates. I wasn't intoxicated. I just wanted to be intimate. I looked him in the eyes and said, "No, I want to be intimate with you." He quickly grabbed our coats and we left. It was a good night. 3 years later, I still have to be very direct with him, but he's a keeper. Story 9. About 10 years ago, a girl named Lisa and I were always flirty with each other. She was friends with a good friend of mine, had a place on Cape Cod. One weekend, my friend invited Lisa and me to their Cape house. There were a few other people there, so it wasn't awkward. One night, we were all on the beach and the others left, leaving just Lisa and me. From the beach, you can see Martha's Vineyard. She thought the lights we saw were a gaggle of boats. I told her it was the island. We made a bet. She thought I'd say the stakes were a kiss, but I said the loser owes the winner $10. I was right, but I never collected the $10. Lisa and I lost touch after that, and so did our mutual friend. Fast forward to February 2016, and Lisa reached out. We had our first date, still crushing hard on each other. The date went excellently. Now we're buying a house together, and I'm planning to take her back to that same beach in June to propose. Still want my $10, though. Story 10. I'm the girl who could not notice obvious hints in my relationship. A great example was when my fiancé and I first got together. He invited me over the day after spending time with me and my friends, where he joked about us being engaged and tried to get my friends to pick wedding gifts from a random catalog he found in my room. It was also very touchy-feely and even cuddled me. My best friend joined in, so maybe that's why I didn't see it. Anyway, the next day he invited me over to play Xbox. It still hasn't clicked that he's into me. I agreed and showed up, got introduced to his mom and his cat, and then he brought me upstairs to show me his record collection and played cute songs. Still not getting it. Then he got out his guitar and played an original love song he wrote. It was beautiful, and I said, "Wow, you're so cool." Still not flirting back. Finally, he went for it and said, "Hey, we should prank your best friend and say we've kissed." And I thought, "Oh my god, such a good prank, bro," and sent a text. This smooth guy then asked, "Hey, so are you a liar?" I spent a minute going, "Wait, are you serious? You want to kiss me? Why?" Before finally just going for it. Fast forward to now and we've been together for 5 years. Story 11. I was friends with a girl whose fiancé called off their wedding a couple of weeks before the date to pursue a crush from high school. Wanting to support her, I offered to hang out and listen if she needed to talk. A few weeks later, I found myself driving to visit her every weekend, staying in hotel rooms and spending as much time with her as possible. She was living in her mom's basement, and I wasn't allowed to stay overnight. One late night, while watching movies, she said she was going to change into her pajamas. She returned in tiny shorts and a tiny shirt, acting like it was no big deal. We continued watching the movie, and she got up a few times to do something I didn't see. After a while, she started rubbing her arms, shivering and saying she was cold. The first time I felt sympathy. The second time I was glad I ran a little hotter than most. The third time I offered to keep her warm. We've been married for 6 years now. She had given up on me making a move and planned an ambush, turning down the temperature until I had to keep her warm. Never underestimate how oblivious we can be. Story 12. What about a guy who doesn't pick up on his own hints? I met a guy through mutual friends while visiting their university. We hit it off, exchanged numbers, and talked often. He said he liked talking to me and thought I was great but wanted to be just friends, not looking for a relationship. I accepted this, expecting not to hear from him again, but he continued to text me regularly, never losing his humor or flirtatious attitude. 4 days later, he invited me to a music festival in his college town. I was confused, but agreed, thinking maybe he was serious about friendship. 3 days before my visit, he mentioned a great pizza place he wanted to show me. 2 days before, he talked about a cool milkshake place we had to visit. The day before, he asked if I wanted to go to a movie after their festival. I was under the impression that others weren't involved in these plans. I told my best friends, and one warned me that the guy sounded like he was playing me. Another friend suggested he might just be a bit clueless. We had a great time together, watched a movie at his apartment, and he made no moves. 2 months later, he asked me out, surprised to learn he had already taken me on a date. It's been 4 years and we're happily married, but he still wonders about that event. Story 13. For my birthday a few days ago, I went on a trip to Europe. On the first night, I met some compatriots and went into a restaurant to get food from my hometown. 3 women invited me to join them, so I moved my plate to their table. They insisted on buying me drinks all night. Eventually, the 2 older ones left, leaving me with the youngest. We talked for a while and she insisted on walking me home. I couldn't convince her otherwise, so we took a 3-minute taxi to my Airbnb. She got upset with me for not trying to convince her to come upstairs, even though she was talking about how honorable ladies don't do that. I made it clear that I wouldn't bring someone upstairs who needed convincing and that I had no intention of being intimate with her. She accused me of being prideful, saying I was lying about not wanting intimacy. She then came upstairs with me to use the bathroom and get into bed. She wanted to sleep there for the night due to a medical reason. We just slept, nothing else. The next morning, I woke up early to continue my travels. She tried to get me to stay, but I didn't want to. She offered to shower and then be intimate, but I still didn't want to. She called me a coward and was hurt that I wouldn't be intimate with her. I reminded her that I had told her I had no such intention. It didn't matter. Remember, I never pursued her. They invited me to their table. We argued and I had to give many reasons why I wouldn't do it because my not wanting to wasn't enough. I tried to explain it wasn't about her, but she insisted it was. I dropped her off at her house and she was unsatisfied and upset with me. The point is, I shouldn't have to explain why I didn't want to be intimate with her. I had valid reasons. My love life is complicated, I had somewhere to be, I was tired, I didn't have protection, I didn't trust others to provide it. The Airbnb host was in the next room. She looked like my ex, but that didn't seem to matter. There's a misconception that men are always seeking intimacy. And if one doesn't want to be intimate, it's seen as a reflection on the other person. But that's not true, and it pressures people into doing things they don't want to. I don't care if someone calls me a coward, but I can see someone else giving in because of that pressure, feeling it's expected of them. That's true. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 14. I was the guy. It happened in high school and I was casually involved with 2 girls. Girl A and Girl B, who were also best friends. We would hang out and engage in some physical stuff, but not be intimate. There was no secret between them, and they were even comfortable enough to occasionally fool around with each other. It's important to note that I had not yet experienced being intimate at the time. So, while I wasn't completely inexperienced, the idea of it was still new to me. Girl A's birthday was approaching, and Girl B and I were discussing it in class. She asked me what I planned to give her. I replied, "Not sure. I haven't really thought about it yet." Girl B suggested, "Well, Girl A's parents are away this weekend, so we thought we could have a fun get-together at her place. You should bring a gift." Not fully understanding the hint, I asked, "What do you think I should get her?" She replied, "How about a dress or a shirt? Something that can be easily taken off." I responded, puzzled, "Why would I get her something that can be taken off? That doesn't sound like a good birthday present." Looking back, I still cringe at my own cluelessness. In another experience, during my time working at a body art studio, one of my friends came in with 2 other friends to get a specific body piercing done. I arrived for my shift just after my friend had finished hers. A coworker informed me that my friend and her friends were there and had already given permission for me to observe the piercings, so I went to the room, knocked, and was told to enter. I walked in, greeted my mentor, my friend, and her friends. My friend then told me I just missed her piercing and said, "Oh, that's okay. I can still see your friends get theirs done, so I can still experience the process." She then lifted her shirt to show me, smiling and staring at me. I didn't think much of it and complimented my mentor on her work, asking my friend about her experience. Later, after her friends were pierced, we went to the front so I could provide them with the aftercare instructions. However, we were out of the pre-folded aftercare sheet, so I bent down to grab more from the box we kept them in. My friend then commented, "Your lower body's quite striking." I replied with a laugh, "That's funny. You're the first to make that joke." She responded, "I'm not joking. I'm expressing interest in you," looking directly into my eyes and smiling. I giggled and proceeded to explain the aftercare to the 3 of them. Every time I looked at my friend, she was still staring and smiling. which made me stammer through the instructions a few times. After finishing, I told him to have a great day and mentioned it was nice to see my friend. She walked away, smiling and giggling. I didn't realize she was serious until a coworker explained to me that she definitely wasn't joking when she said, "I'm expressing interest in you." Story 15. My best friend, a girl, moved back from college and started spending a lot of time with me for 2 years. She got a job near my house, stayed with me most nights of the week, wore comfortable or suggestive clothing, and often made inappropriate jokes. She also mentioned how good she was at certain intimate activities and how amazing she was in bed. I thought she was just my best friend, and there was nothing more to it. She insisted that we kiss for New Year's and under the holiday mistletoe 2 years in a row, saying there was no one else so we could do it as friends. She would give me back and foot massages, hang out while I played games with the guys or worked, and invite me to most of her outings and errands. Her friends became her friends, but she would still prioritize me and drop everything if I wanted to hang out. She even made me promise that we could get married if we were both unmarried by the time we turned 35. I never realized there might be more to her actions. It wasn't until a couple of years later when someone suggested that she might have been into me. Story 16. When I was a teenager, I took a multimedia class and routinely sat next to this girl. She was incredibly attractive, a bit quirky, and could hold her own in teasing conversations. I thought she was perfect. Throughout the year, we passed notes to each other, which eventually turned into entire notebooks of notes. She would talk about some guys she would see from time to time, and I did the same. One day I sort of confessed that I had feelings for her and wanted to kiss her in the middle of class. She simply wrote back, "So why don't you?" and nothing more. I said it was because she was seeing someone else and I didn't want to interfere. That was the first sign I missed. The second was a short while later. I hadn't yet lost my V card and I knew she was more experienced. When the topic came up, I mentioned how frustrating it was. She wrote back, "Skip the rest of the day with me." I replied, "No, I can't. My dad would find out and he'd be really upset." She transferred out of that class about a week later. It took me 3 whole years to realize, oh my gosh, she wanted to be intimate with me. No! I've regretted that missed opportunity ever since. The signs were so obvious, and I completely missed them. Story 17. There was this guy in high school who I had a huge crush on. I was totally infatuated with him. He was incredibly attractive, and a couple of years older than me. We had many mutual friends, so we often ended up at the same social gatherings. I flirted with him and gave him every sign I knew, but he never asked me out, so I thought maybe he wasn't interested. Years later, as adults in our early 20s, I met up with an old friend, and we ended up at my high school crush's house. He was having a small house party. The moment I saw him, it felt like going back in time. All those old feelings came rushing back. We started talking alone, and he confessed that he thought I was the most beautiful girl in our high school and that he was really into me, but assumed I was out of his league. I was surprised and told him how much I liked him back then, too. We spent the entire night talking and laughing about old times, sharing all the things we'd always wanted to say in high school but never had the courage to. We cuddled all night, and it felt like my high school self finally got what she wanted. It was surreal and dreamlike, like coming full circle. Although we didn't end up together after that night, I'm glad I had that one special night. Story 18. I attended an all-boys Catholic high school. We had 2 all-girls schools as our sister programs. It's safe to say that we had no idea what women were thinking or doing. At least, I had no clue. I was invited to the winter formal by Marie, a girl I didn't know well but who was very popular and attractive. My best friend at the time went with Jordan, a girl I had admired from afar since middle school. To me, she was stunningly beautiful. During the uncomfortably hot and nauseating teen limo ride through the hilly city, everyone was either hammered, sick, passed out, or making out. Except for me, my best friend, and our dates. My best friend had the idea to switch dates because Jordan wanted to make out with me and Marie wanted to hook up with Nick, my friend. For some reason, my sense of justice at the time told me this wasn't right and that we should stick with our original dates. But perhaps that night fate had other plans. Jordan turned to me and asked if her breath smelled okay. I confirmed it was minty and she offered me gum. Then she said, "You're silly. I want to kiss you. Are you an idiot? Kiss me." It was the most awkward and amazing kiss of my high school years, and I had no idea what was happening. Story 19. During college, there was a girl in one of my classes that I liked but never had the courage to approach. One day I ran into her in town while she was carrying her camera and we started a conversation about photography. The topic shifted to an upcoming test in the class we shared, and we agreed to meet up over the weekend to study. When I went to pick her up, she was wearing a short skirt and a low-cut top. We wandered around town, taking photos of various things. It began to rain, and she suggested we head to her place to study. Once there, she wasn't very focused on studying. She was lying on her stomach in front of me, giving me a clear view of her blessings, and even mentioned that she knew I looked at her in class. I told her to stop talking because I wanted to concentrate on studying. Then she tossed the books aside, went up to me and said, "Do you really think I wanted to study?" That's when I finally understood. I had been completely oblivious until she was physically close to me. A few months later, I attended a convention where young adults were selected by local organizations to represent them. There I met a girl from Minnesota. I'm from Georgia. Between delegation meetings, we young adults would hang out and network. The girl from Minnesota kept talking to me about Game of Thrones and asked about my delegation committee. I told her the room where we were meeting, not thinking much of it. One day I left my blazer in the committee room because it was a warm day. The convention lasted a week and the girl from Minnesota and I continued to talk and hang out. When the convention ended, we went our separate ways. 3 years later, I wore the same blazer to a talk by Dr. Cornel West. This blazer had been dry cleaned and worn to church and other events. I was listening to music and took my earbuds out, placing them in an inside pocket. I found a strange piece of paper that looked like a dry cleaner's receipt. When I unfolded it, I discovered the girl from Minnesota's full name, phone number, email, and Snapchat information. I put the slip back into the pocket and it's still there today. Story 20. I remember missing a very obvious hint. There was a girl in my psychology class who I chatted with all the time. To me, it seemed like the popular girl was just talking to the class clown because we happened to be seated next to each other and she knew my older sister. We mostly just shared silly jokes and had fun. I didn't think much of it at the time. But one day she called me after class and said she'd been talking to my sister, who had asked her to ask me out, thinking it would be good for me to go on a date. The girl wanted to know if I was free that weekend. There I was, facing one of the prettiest girls in school, who was asking me out on a date, with whom I got along well. All I could think was, how dare my sister try to interfere with my life? Does she honestly think I'm so clueless that I need help with dating? Sure, I've never dated before and I've never even kissed a girl, but I won't accept her pity. Hiding my frustration, I told the girl I was busy that weekend and didn't suggest another time. That was the end of it. We still chatted in psychology class, but not as much. We stopped talking altogether after the class ended. About a year later, I mentioned to my sister how annoyed I was that she had tried to set me up on a pity date. She had no idea what I was talking about. Story 21. I was at an ex's place. She was beautiful and had a great figure, and never thought something like this would happen. She was stressed, and we started talking. I like listening, so I let her speak. She wanted me to talk, so I shared my stress. But she cut the conversation short to offer me a massage. I declined, feeling self-conscious about my body and comfortable with being touched like that. She insisted, and I reluctantly agreed. She asked me to take my shirt off, but I firmly said no. She gave me a massage, which was great. It was my first one. Then she lay on her stomach and said, "Your turn." I enjoy giving massages, so I was happy to do it. She went off the bed, smiled, and asked me to turn away for a moment. I did, and she took her top off before lying back down. I was shocked and became very timid, worried about doing something wrong, like accidentally moving on to her inappropriately. After the massage, she just lay on her side, so I stood up, thinking I should leave. Luckily, she found me adorable and said, "No, silly, come here and cuddle with me." We had a wonderful day together. As much as I wanted something more to happen during the massage, and especially after she rolled on her side, I couldn't shake the fear of doing something wrong, so I waited. Story 22. Once when I was at my apartment alone, an attractive girl I knew came over and asked if I had a pair of jeans she could borrow. I had just put on my last clean pair, but she insisted we go to my room to check if I had one last pair left for her to borrow. She seemed a bit disappointed when I did find a fresh pair at the bottom of my drawer and then left the room for her to try them on. This girl often came over for various reasons. Watching a movie, having a spontaneous pancake party in the afternoon, usually when I was alone in the apartment. My roommate was a big partygoer and my girlfriend at the time lived 2 hours away, so I was often alone. I assumed she thought I was lonely and needed company. I knew there was a chance she thought I was lonely enough for a casual encounter, but I never took the hint. The "let me borrow some jeans" incident was the least subtle hint she ever gave, assuming she was actually hinting at something. Story 23. During college, I lived a 30-minute walk from campus where the parties were. A girl invited me to stay at her place a few times, saying it would be more convenient for me. Each time I slept on her sofa, and after about half an hour, she would leave her bed to join me, resting her head on my chest. I thought that was just a friendly gesture. Then one night she came over, turned her back to me, and I stayed close but not touching, with my arms at my sides, careful not to make contact. After a while, she turned to face me and we talked, leading to us cuddling. This time, we were much closer. I didn't try anything, thinking this was just something girls do with male friends. It didn't end there. In the morning, she woke up to go to a lecture but decided to come back to bed with me instead. This time, she pressed her back firmly against me and I waited for clearer signs. After half an hour, she got up, saying she had made a mistake by not attending the lecture, while I sat in bed, feeling foolish and realizing I'd missed an opportunity. For the record, A friend had told me a week earlier that she had only had one boyfriend and preferred to wait before being intimate with someone. I really didn't think she would consider me as a potential partner, but looking back, it seems so obvious. You waited for more signs? Dude, if she had a neon sign saying kiss me, you'd probably be like, is that a new form of lighting technology? Story 24. 2 years ago in high school, a typical day started with waking up, eating cereal, and going to school. However, there was an unusual task that day. Our class was assigned to clean a newly built townhouse to earn money for a school trip to Germany. I wasn't keen on going because I'm lazy and saw no reason to participate, but I didn't want to be irresponsible and not show up, so I drove to the townhouse to help clean. After about 3 to 4 hours of cleaning, one of the girls approached me and said, "Jenny has no ride home. What should we do?" I replied, "Not sure. Can't you ask someone else for a ride?" The girl explained, "We've asked everyone, but no one can take her. Why don't you give her a ride to your place so she can wait there until her parents can pick her up later?" This seemed reasonable since I lived only 10 minutes away by car, and she lived about an hour from where we were. So we headed to my parents' house. Upon arrival, I went straight inside and Jenny followed. My parents were at the door, looking surprised. They didn't ask why I brought a girl home, but I explained the situation simply. No further words were exchanged. I then took Jenny up to my room and told her I'd be back after changing clothes downstairs. She asked, "Why don't you change here?" I said, "I need to get different clothes downstairs, so we'll change there." Downstairs, my mom was unusually helpful. She offered to get me anything I needed and even asked if I wanted her to go to the store right then. I casually said, "Sure, pizza would be great." She left to get us pizza, and I thought, wow, my mom is in a great mood today, getting me pizza and everything. Upstairs, I sat on the bed with Jenny. She suggested, "Why don't we watch a movie?" Being a movie enthusiast, I agreed enthusiastically. I found an action movie I'd seen many times on my computer, but she insisted on a romance movie instead. During the movie, she asked me many personal questions, like who I thought was the best looking in her class and who I wanted to be intimate with. I wanted to say it was her, but I didn't think it was appropriate. After 4 hours, her sister arrived to pick her up. I walked her downstairs and said goodbye. She remarked, "If you had just tried, you might have gotten something out of my visit." My mom happened to walk by just then. Jenny left, seeming upset. Why didn't I realize what was happening? I'm not sure, but I regret it more than I should. Story 25. I was in college and there was a girl I was talking to for a while. One time we were with friends in the student commons when she asked me, "Hey, will you come with me to my math teacher's office? I need to ask him something, but I don't want to go alone. He creeps me out." I thought it was because we were close and she trusted me. And since I'm a fairly large guy, she might want someone intimidating with her. I didn't think much of it. She led me to the art building on campus, which didn't have any math teacher offices. Being oblivious and distracted by her leggings, I didn't notice which building we were in. I didn't pick up on the building thing, so we ended up by some vending machines in a fairly isolated corner. I joked about her being lost and she said she was. Her mom worked at the college, so she knew the place inside and out. There was no way she was lost. I was just that clueless. She mentioned there were no security cameras in the art building. I thought she was just making conversation. It wasn't until a year later that I realized she had led me to a secluded area of the school without security cameras. Not to talk to a teacher, but probably to be intimate or something. Story 26. I was staying at my uncle's house for a few days while we were preparing to move to a new location. His next-door neighbor's daughter came over and he joked about me not making a move on her. We spent some time watching TV together. She was subtly checking me out and making suggestive comments. She has a curvy figure and mentioned how she notices guys looking at her sometimes. She knew I had a car, and after my uncle and his girlfriend went to bed, she expressed interest in seeing my car. I hesitantly agreed and we went out to my Jeep, which was parked in a spot where we couldn't be seen unless someone was right outside the car door. Once inside the car, I turned on the radio and tried to show her the features of my car, as it was an awkward situation. It was cold outside, and she mentioned it in a way that suggested she wanted some warmth. She then leaned in, with her blessings visible, and asked with a sly smile, "What do you want to do now?" I responded, "Let's go back inside," and turned off the car, heading back indoors. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.